What is going on YouTube? Just helping you out here. And in this video, I'm going to be unboxing the hidden camera smoke detector from today's video sponsor, CAMDUCK. If you are interested in one of these cameras or any other product on CAMDUCK's website, please use my link in the description below to get 10% off your order and help support my channel. Once I have used the camera for a bit of time, I will likely make a review video where I share my experience with it. Alright, let's get right into this unboxing. So as always, I'm first going to get started with the packaging, and as you can see here, we do have a standard corrugated box, but I will say this does feel a little bit nicer than regular cardboard. It seems a little bit thinner and more compact, so it just feels a little bit more durable, which honestly might be a good thing considering this is a piece of electronics and you don't want that to get damaged during the transportation process. There really isn't a whole lot of information on the box either. You can see on the top here we just have a CAMDUCK logo, and there isn't anything on any other panel except for the front here, which just has a little product label. Alright, so it looks like this box is actually a hinge, so we're going to lift up this flap here. And we'll get inside. So on the very top here, it looks like we have a little user manual. This camera has a lot of different features, so I highly recommend taking a look at this before you do anything else. And so I'd like to go through this a little bit and highlight some of those key features before we get to the actual camera. So on the front here, you have the model number, and you also have CAMDUCK's website. And if we open this thing up, over here on the left, there's some information about the hardware, so it tells you what some of the buttons do, what the lights mean, things like that. And the one thing I want to highlight there is that there is a hidden indicator light, and that'll help you figure out things like whether or not it's connected to Wi-Fi or if it's recognizing an SD card. Over on the right here, it shows you how to disassemble the base, so you can mount the base to the wall, and so you can access the features under the base, like right here. Now the thing to highlight here is that there are 3 ways that you can power this device. You can connect it to a 110 to 240 volt AC power source, which is recommended for long-term use. You can use a 18650 lithium-ion battery, which I will note can only handle about 6 hours of continuous recording, so that's really only useful if you're planning on recording a certain area for a very short period of time, but it's mainly there for power outages, so if your main power source goes out, you'll be able to continue recording for about 6 hours and hopefully your power comes on before that. And lastly, you can power it with a 5 volt Type-C cord, which is essentially a phone charger, but that's really only recommended as a temporary power source or just for charging the battery. And down here it shows you how to insert the SD card. And this is useful if you want to store the video footage. Now when you purchase one of these cameras, you have the option to purchase one of these 18650 lithium-ion batteries. You also have the option to purchase a 128 gigabyte SD card, but the camera does support up to a 256 gigabyte SD card. Now one thing to note here is that the camera does record in an MP4 video format, but it does have H.264 video compression, which essentially just makes the video file smaller and allows you to store more on the same SD card. So CAMDUCK claims that you can get about 25 days worth of footage on a 256 gigabyte SD card. Alright, moving on to the next page here. Over here it shows you how to mount the camera, and then over here it shows you how to download the app and how to set it up. This app is going to be useful because it allows you to remotely view the camera on your phone from anywhere, anytime. You can also change the angle of the camera, so the camera can only see about 120 degrees at any given moment, but you can rotate the camera a full 360 degrees, so there aren't any blind spots in your view. The app also allows you to remotely record video, take pictures, look at playback, and other functions. And if any of you are worried about the security of the data being captured, all data is encrypted. Alright, moving on to the next page, this shows you how to save the recorded video and how to turn on the camera. Now if we move on to the back, most of these pages show you how to connect the camera via Wi-Fi as well as Bluetooth. Connecting via Wi-Fi pretty much allows you to do all of the things that I mentioned earlier with the app, even if you aren't physically near the camera. Now, if for some reason you lose power or your internet drops, you can also connect to the camera via Bluetooth, but Bluetooth will only work if you're within about 30 meters of the camera, so that's going to be useful if you are trying to monitor something in your house from another room. Now, the last thing I want to mention about connectivity before we move on is that this camera does have motion detection. So if you have this camera set up in a spot where people shouldn't be, or you don't really expect people to be there, and somebody happens to show up in the camera's field of view, you can get a notification on your phone so you're alerted right away, and then you can go into the app and remotely view the camera to see what's going on. Alright, so the last thing here is it shows you how to turn the camera off, and then it also tells you what accessories are included with the camera, but I will get into this as we unbox this package. Alright, so that's enough about the user manual. Let's see what else we have inside this box. So it looks like the camera's sitting in this plastic piece, so we'll just pull it out of there. And I'm going to set this off to the side for now so we can talk about the other accessories in the box. Take this plastic piece out. This is just a very thin plastic piece to help hold everything in place. Gonna set that off to the side as well. So in the box here, you can see that we have quite a few things, so I'll just go through these quickly, and then we'll take a look at the actual camera. Right here, we have a micro SD card reader. So any footage that's captured on the camera and stored in the SD card, you can then put the SD card in here, plug this into a computer, and get that footage on your computer. Just below that SD card reader, you can see we have this little piece right here. Kind of looks like a guitar pick, and this is supposed to help you get a cover piece off of the camera. I actually really do appreciate that they included this. I've had plenty of products in the past that had a plastic panel that was a really big pain to get off. You had to like dig your nail in there, and you could risk bending your nail backward or struggling to get it open. So just really appreciate that they included this. Over here we have some hardware that will help you mount this to a wall. So you can see there's those green plastic things that get put into a wall or a ceiling, and then the screws that you can then use to mount the base plate of the camera into these green things in the wall. Right here, we have the 128 gigabyte CAMDUCK specialized SD card. I also appreciate that they put this in a bigger plastic container because these things are tiny and very easy to lose. So you can purchase this with the SD card if you would like. You do not have to, but as I mentioned earlier, you can use a 256 gigabyte SD card as well. And the last thing in here is a USB Type A to USB Type C cable, which, as I mentioned earlier, can be used to charge the battery, or it can just be used to power the camera altogether for a temporary period of time. Now, real quick, I'm just going to take this little rubber band off here so I can tell you how long this cable is. Alright, so this looks like it's about a 3-foot cable, which isn't super short, also isn't super long, but I mean, this is a very standard cable, so you don't necessarily have to use this one. If you have one of those 12-foot phone chargers that's USB-A to USB-C, you should be able to use that as well. Alright, now that we have gone through everything in the box and all the accessories, I'm going to set this off to the side so we can finally take a look at this camera. So this thing is put in a little plastic bag, so I'm first going to take that off. Alright, so the first thing that I want to mention is that this feels a little bit heavier than I was expecting. It's not heavy by any means, but it's a little heavier than I was expecting, that's all. According to CAMDUCK's website, it is 380 grams, which is less than a pound. It is about 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches by 2.5 inches, which is a pretty typical size for a smoke detector, and I honestly think they did a really good job with the look of this thing. Like, if I saw this hanging in somebody's house, I wouldn't really think twice about it being anything other than a smoke detector. So I think they did a really good job with the look of this thing. Now, pretty much the entire thing is made out of a very basic white plastic. But again, I haven't seen a smoke detector that's made out of anything but a basic white plastic, so I think that is totally fine. It does not feel like it was cheaply made or anything like that. So again, I think it checks the box for looking and feeling like a smoke detector. On the top here, we have the on-off button. And then right next to that on-off button, we have a ventilation hole. So this is a piece of electronics. When electronics are running, they tend to get hot. So this just gives a spot for some of that heat to escape and not just build up inside the unit. I'm not 100% sure what this hole is. I believe it is also a ventilation hole based off of the information that I got on CAMDUCK's website, but I'm not 100% sure. Now, if we move up to the top here, you can see that this looks like a speaker, and that is purely ornamental. It is just to kind of add to the smoke detector look. There actually is not any sort of speaker that will be making noise right here. And finally, the most important thing on this side is this right here, which is essentially like a one-way plastic. So the camera lens is in here, and also that hidden indicator light that I mentioned earlier is also in here. So the camera will be able to see out of this, but obviously we cannot see into there. And based off the angle of that plastic piece, you can see this is where the 120-degree field of view comes into play. But as I mentioned earlier, this can rotate a full 360 degrees. So if you're recording something and it goes out of the frame, you can simply rotate this so that way you can see it again. Now on the side here, you can see there's a little more detail in the plastic. It sort of has these little arches in it. And now if we move on to the back, You can see right here we have that base plate that I was talking about earlier, and all of the cutouts on here do serve some sort of purpose. So you can see we have 3 holes right here, and those are the holes that you were going to use to mount this to the ceiling or to some sort of wall. Right here we have a little gap that exposes the 2 power cables that would need to be connected to a 120 to 240 volt power supply to power the camera long term. And there's also a gap here, so you can take these power cords and feed them up through here instead rather than have them exposed right there. And the last thing on this plate are these 3 slots right here, which essentially just lock the base plate in place. And it's very easy to take it off. All you have to do is twist it and it comes right off like that. So now I'm going to set this off to the side so we can talk about this right here. Now that we have removed that panel, you can see these power cables a little better, and you can actually take them out. That way this extends a little bit away from the camera if you need it. Right here, here, and here are a few holes that have screws in them in case you want to open this thing up for some reason. And there's also 2 more holes here. Not exactly sure what those are for either. It doesn't say anything about them in the information, so I'm guessing those might also be some sort of ventilation hole. If we look down here, there's a nice big warning that there is a non-replacement battery inside this plastic piece right here. It also says do not remove battery, and also note that there is the battery positive and negative, and you'll see in the plastic here there's a positive here and a negative here, so you know which orientation the battery needs to go in. I'm not exactly sure why it says to not remove the battery or that it's non-replacement, but I'm going to open this thing up anyways just to show you. But before we do that, there is a little plastic piece right here that is very common in electronics like this, and that is essentially just to keep the battery not connected to the camera quite yet. This little plastic piece is actually interrupting the circuit between the battery and the rest of the camera. So in order to essentially activate it or close the circuit, all you need to do is pull out this plastic piece and it should work just fine. But as I said, I'm going to remove this plastic tape with the warning on it to see what we have inside. And there you have it. That's the 1865 lithium-ion battery that I talked about earlier. Now the last thing that I want to talk about is what's under this cover board here, and that is the cover piece you're supposed to remove with this little guitar pick looking cover removal tool that came with the device. But just to see if I can do it, I'm going to completely ignore what I said earlier about doing this kind of thing with your nail. That really wasn't that difficult, but I'd still recommend using the little tool they give you. So now if we take a little closer look at this, you can see this is the USB-C charging port. Right next to that, we have one of these reset holes. These are pretty common on most electronics, and they're typically there so if the device acts up or something is just going wrong, you can put a paper clip in there and push a button that essentially resets the device back to factory defaults. And finally over here, this is the slot where you're going to put your micro SD card. Now before we finish up this video, there are a few important pieces of information that I found on CAMDUCK's website. All video footage is timestamped, so if there's a particular event that you're looking for when you're going back into the footage, you'll know exactly what time it happened. The recorded footage is 1280 by 720 resolution, and the optimal shooting distance is about 0.5 meter to 12 meters. It does autofocus, but you can manually focus it as well. It does not have a microphone or night vision, but it can work in low light. The main use for this camera is security, so that could be indoors in your house, it could be at your place of employment in the office, or it could be a warehouse, but it can also just be used for monitoring, so it can monitor pets, it can monitor your kids, or other loved ones that you need to look out for. And finally, some logistical information. All shipping is free in the United States, and usually takes 7 to 14 days, up to 25 days. CAMDUCK offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, 1-year replacement, as well as free returns, and they have an experienced after-sales support team. Alright, so overall, aside from the packaging, we have the user manual, we have the wall mounts, we have the Type-C charging cable, we have a 128 gigabyte micro SD card, we have that plastic cover removal tool, we have the micro SD card reader, we have the mounting plate, and we have the camera itself with the battery included. And so that pretty much wraps it up for this unboxing. Big shout out to CAMDUCK for sponsoring this video. And again, if you would like one of these or any other product on CAMDUCK's website, please use my link in the description below to get 10% off and help support my channel. Feel free to check out all my other unboxing videos in the playlist in the top left corner. If you enjoyed this one, please drop a like, leave a comment if you have any questions or an idea for a future video. Feel free to follow my socials in the description below. And lastly, please don't forget to subscribe and tell your friends about my channel so I can grow and help more of you guys out. I'm just helping you out. See you in the next video.